late May, they had a record of 86-43. So they were winning at a pace of, I think it's like 115 victory pace for an entire season. They were a very good baseball team. Tim Tschida, I'm sure, watched much, if not all of it. He's kind enough to join us on the Whiting Clinic LASIK and Cataract Hotline. Tim, I hope you are well. You survived the State Fair onslaught.
Yeah. Moving on to the next page.
That's right? It. That's all you can do. If I had been working yesterday, we would have tried to get you on yesterday because obviously a lot has happened since the Game 6 kerfuffles. But
yep.
I want to actually start there because I still think they raise some interesting issues. I come at this strictly by what I saw via video, and I, by the way, was late to the party. I did not see it live. I got on Twitter, and I saw, again, the world was coming to an end because the worst umpire call in history had been called. This is on the course of the play. Turner hits a slow roller in front of the plate. The pitcher races to pick up the ball. He fires towards first. Throw whizzes past the first baseman. And, of course, as he crosses the bag, Turner knocks the ball into the glove, sending it flying off his left hand. The home plate umpire Sam Holbrook signals interference. All hell breaks loose at that point as well. Again, I thought, I'm going, well, I'm kind of curious now. So I watched it, and I go, well, it looks to me like it might be the right call, even if it's kind of a weird rule. And I was immediately ripped and mocked and ridiculed and so forth. You're umpire guy. Tell me if you saw it live, what you saw, and sort of your reaction to what took place after.
Well, he was 100% correct. And the downside to that play is it doesn't happen very often. And when it does happen, nobody knows what it is. You know, the players are not really that well-versed in how that rule plays out and why it's there. And, you know, it's hard to get a player to think about what he's doing when he's running up the first baseline, just trying to beat out a slowly hit ball.
Sure.
The rule is this. The rule is you must run the last 45 feet, which it's a 90-foot base. The last 45 feet, you have to be on the foul side of the line in what's called the 45-foot lane. As a plate umpire, and if you look at the replay of it, and of course there's plenty different ways to find it, Sam was right on the line, looking right up the line the way he's supposed to be, and Turner was in fair territory the entire way, which is not uncommon for a right-handed batter because he's starting from there in the first place. And he's just trying to beat it out. He's not trying to hinder anything. However, the judgment is based on this. If, in the judgment of the umpire, the batter runner's presence inside the line prevents whoever is covering first base from catching the ball, the batter runner's out for interference. And everybody goes back to where they were at the time of the pitch. So anybody that's out there listening, you can go look at it and decide for yourself. I umpired over 3,500 games in my career. I've had that call myself as the plate umpire maybe 5 times. I've been on the field for it maybe 10, including my 5, with 5 other times where I was on one of the bases. I've never had that call made without somebody getting ejected over. They just don't like it.
Yeah.
You know, and then you always get that opinion that comes out this, well, you just can't make that call in that situation. Well, when are you supposed to make it? It happened.
Mm-hmm.
It occurred, and they did everything right. Now, what's going to spin off of this? Most likely, they will make that play reviewable in the future, which they did. Remember a couple of years back when Utley took out the second baseman for the Mets, and they now they made that play reviewable. They'll make this reviewable, and they should. You know, because it's a very important call. It's obviously a very important time of the game and the series itself. And, you know, they got it right. They've been kind of under the gun a little bit. I'm going to cut a little slack to the whole World Series crew because we lost a member of the active staff during the World Series, tragically. And during the day off between games 5 and 6, they chartered that crew to the funeral service in Des Moines and then flew them back to Houston. Little extra travel involved for those guys, but for a good cause. But yeah, that call itself, as an umpire, when that happens, you can't start rooting or cheering, but I'm really glad that it didn't close the door on Washington, that they were able to overcome what it gave them, and they still won the ball game. That's always good. Not as an umpire are you going to do anything to try to make that happen, but things worked out. And that's a good thing, because it doesn't always happen.
So I thought read some people were bitter that they thought then Torrey, in saying it was the right call, said it was the right call for the wrong reason. And what was the distinction? Did Torrey say because he interfered not just where he was running, but that literally he interfered with the glove, or made it impossible for him to make the catch with the glove? What was the distinction there that had some people bitter regarding, not that Torrey said, yeah, it's the right call, but the reason he gave for suggesting it was the right call?
Yeah, Joel gave what would be, I describe it as a player's and an executive's description, because he's not probably going to be as well versed in the rule as an umpire.
Right.
But just looking at it, he's looking at, well, geez, he knocked the guy's glove off. If that's not interference, what is?
Okay.
And that's all he said. And the media kind of hung their hat on it a little bit, and people, when you get in those kind of situations, people see what they want to see and they hear what they want to hear. And what's the word I want to look for? His reasoning was good.
Mm-hmm.
It was true. It was what he saw in his eyes. And you know what? He backed the umpires, not because he's the boss, but because he believed it to be correct. And, Joe's been in the game a long time. And he's learned a lot since becoming an executive about what umpires really go through. And, maybe it wasn't the most complete explanation that everybody wanted, but he had the courage to come out and say it right away without sitting down and having to be coached. He just spoke from his heart, and I admire him for that.
Former MLB umpire Tim Tschida is with us on the Fan. Glenn Mason will join at the top of the hour. In listening to you talking about how you called it almost sounds as if what you're saying is, it's really not a call an umpire wants to have to make, especially in that circumstance, for all the obvious reasons that you lay out, that you do it reluctantly. You don't do it because you're waiting to seize upon that kind of opportunity, because it's a weird play. And as you say, runners often run in the wrong place, and they're not immediately on their way down called out on that basis, even though I guess technically maybe you could, I don't know. But it's a call that you feel like, all right, if I got to make it, I'm going to make it. And that's what surprised me about the reaction. Is the reaction a lack of knowledge as to exactly what the rule is, you think, or a feeling that, well, morally, it just doesn't seem fair to that base runner?
Yeah, it's in umpire speak, we refer to that type of play as you want to make it be there. It's kind of like calling a balk with a runner on third base.
Right.
Don't be borderline. Don't be nitpicky. Make it be there to where you can say, I had no choice. I had to call it because that's what it was. And again, it's been a rule that's been contested over the years as to maybe they should just get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they should do something with the base, and it's kind of funny because like in fast pitch softball, I don't know if I can illustrate this on radio, but all the bases are in fair territory in Major League Baseball, in all baseballs,
yep.
Basically. Well, in softball, they have the base extends into foul territory for that particular rule, so that when the runner arrives at the base itself, he's got room to still touch the base without colliding with the first baseman, which kind of makes sense if you stop and think about
sure.
it. That could really eliminate a lot of things. The only downside to that is it's going to come into play on a fair foul call of a bounding ball that goes over the bank, because part of that base is now in foul territory. So what do you do with that? I think the cure is just to make it reviewable. And then when you're working home plate and you have that play occur, your real judgment is based on, is it a good throw? That's the first thing you're looking for. Now, did the runner prevent it from catching it,
mm-hmm.
or was it just plain a bad throw? You're not there to protect the guy throwing the ball. You're there to protect the person receiving the ball. And, you know, a lot of times a catcher, well, they say, well, I couldn't see my first baseman. Well, that's tough luck. You know, you gotta try to make a good throw. And if it's high and it pulls him off the bag, you're not going to have that call. It's not going to be made because that didn't cause the first baseman or whoever was covering first to not catch the ball. So that's your real judgment on that play right there is whether or not the throw was true.
Let's just say for the sake of this discussion that it was the wrong call, that you even concluded that it was the wrong call. Why is it that, as obviously a lot of people via social media did, and just losing their minds? And that's I guess my next question is that, and maybe I'm answering it because it's all social media driven. I don't know, but why is it that we seem to lose our minds more than ever on that kind of call, as if, well, if baseball doesn't fix something like that, baseball can't survive, as opposed to, okay, in every World Series, even, you know, postseason games, there's going to be some calls that are going to be questionable. We can argue about them, whatever. It's not great, but that's sort of, you know, that's still sort of part of the deal. And people, I think, tended to be, other than the fans who were supporting one team or the other, a little bit more philosophical, even though they said, well, that was a bad call. They didn't want to have a congressional investigation. Now they do. Now they want everything remade and redone, and we want robot umpires everywhere. Why are we like that?
I don't know. And it's kind of worrisome to me that things tend to trend in that direction in all of sports. You're never going to make it perfect. And again, fans look at it. I've always heard that response for as long as I've been an umpire, and that is, well, you just can't make that call in that situation. You know, and well, as an umpire or a referee, whatever sport you're officiating, you cannot go out there with consequence in mind. You have to just go out there with your skills, with your knowledge. You have to know the rules. You got to know how to get it into position. You got to look at the play. You got to call what you see and do what you think is right. And that's it. And if you start factoring in all this other stuff, you're just complicating something that is basically simple. And, you know, I hope it stays that way. I'm not opposed to replay, and I'm not opposed to even making that play reviewable, because replay is designed to be able to correct something that is clearly incorrect. All right, this play, even though it was not reviewable, I kind of admire the guys, you know, for saying the heck with it. We're going to talk to New York anyway, because we really don't want to move forward from this point without making sure we're correct, because we're taking a scoring opportunity away from a team that's on the verge of being eliminated. So
in this case, the review, that delay was simply to be just so that everybody's on the same page that, hey, we're calling you, we are in contact with you to confirm that this play, that we haven't blown it, that in fact this play is not reviewable. Was that, you think, the whole point of that delay?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I wasn't there, and I haven't spoken to anyone, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to find that out. I think and I can't speak for the guys that were on the field, but if I were the calling umpire involved in that play, I would have done the same thing and say, hey, you know, I've exhausted every possible avenue I have. And you know, again, that is part of your job, and a big part of your job. And you know, I'm glad they did it. I'm glad everything worked out okay. You know, again, it's a call that nobody likes. That call. There's certain calls that occur, and someday we'll talk about a whole bunch of other ones. I'll write them down someday, Dan. And there's some that you just go, oh, God, why did this happen now? And why do I have to be the guy? And kind of thing. And you know, you just want to go, oh, geez, why wasn't I working third base tonight? That kind of thing. But they got it right. And thank goodness for them, and thank goodness for the outcome. Yeah. And, you know, it's not one that we're going to talk about for the next 20 years.
No, because he's exactly right, as it turns out. The series itself, the TV ratings, at least going into Game 6 or 7, not all that great, which I don't know that I completely understand. Because, I mean, in terms of, obviously, a road team winning every game, you didn't have a bunch of dramatic finishes at the end of games. You had a couple of those, too. It certainly looked like a very good series with some historic aspects to it, as we mentioned earlier, regarding the Nationals. From a baseball standpoint, what was your take on the series itself?
I liked it. I'm not a betting man or anything like that, but when people were asking me about it, I had said I watch out for Washington.
Mm-hmm.
They've got 4 starting pitchers. They don't have, and in addition to that, and anybody who's out there listening right now, all this stuff that goes around baseball about using the opener and the bullpen games and all that stuff, the 2 teams that made it to the finish line do not do that. They've got starters.
That's true.
They're going out, they're trying to get 5, 6, 100 plus pitches and go by way of the traditional style of game. And that's what it takes to get to the end. You're just not going to be able to trick your way to the finish line in today's game. 10 years from now, that may be different. But right now, you still got to have the horses, and they've still got to be able to throw. And the team that pitched the best won the World Series. They beat Justin Verlander twice in Houston. And now I don't know if you can say that's the difference, but that's a big difference. And probably unexpected.
Would you have pulled Greinke? I know it's an easy second guess now, but that, of course, is the big question coming out of that Game 7.
Usually what they base those decisions on is they have their statistical analysis goes to the third time through the order.
Right.
That a guy's ERA goes from 2.2 to 4.1 on the transition from the second to the third time through the order. So I didn't have that information at my disposal, but you got to trust those guys in the bullpen, and if you start showing any type of chink in your armor there where you're not trusting those guys in the bullpen that got you there all year, that rubs off on the whole team. So you kind of gotta just go with the guys that got you there, as they say, dance with the one you brung. And no, I never second guess the managers when it comes to that. They know their people, and it could very well be that they got Cole up to warm up with the possibility of using him.
Mm-hmm.
He might have just said, I can't go. We don't know that, because I'm sure if he could have gone, they probably would have brought him in. I'm guessing, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Lastly, for Tim Tschida, I don't know how much basketball officiating you've done over the years, but there was an interesting brawl that broke out last night, as you know, in Philly, involving Joel Embiid from Philly and Karl Anthony Towns from the Wolves. Did you get a chance to see it? Any impressions in terms of how, in that sort of setting, which is kind of different from baseball, umpire, or in this case, referees, I guess, I mean, how are they supposed to proceed?
Oh my God! Well, especially the NBA, those guys are huge.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 3 referees, and there's 10 players in uniform on the court, plus the 5 on the bench, whatever, which are all going to get involved somehow, some way. You got to get out of the way, because if you get in the middle, I learned this back when I was in AAA baseball. I thought it was my job to jump in the middle and break them up. And the next day, one of the outfielders, I was working the bases, and he took his position. He ran by me and he said, "I got to tell you something." I said, "What's that?" He says, "You have no idea how close I came to punching you right in the nose last night. I didn't know who you were. You were standing in the middle." He said, and I reared back, and I realized it was you, and I caught myself just in time. And then I realized at that point, what am I doing? Why am I in the middle of this? I can't stop them. They're going to stop when they're ready to stop. And you got to get on the outside and get help from the coaching staff and the other players, and get on the outside and start taking names. Otherwise, you're not going to break it up. So these are world-class athletes that are big, strong men, and I'm not. And that's pretty much it.
Man's got to know his limitations, is what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Timmy, great stuff as always, man. We appreciate chatting. We will definitely be in touch soon. Take care.
Dan, all right, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Tim Tschida, former Major League Baseball umpire, always a terrific guest here on the program.